Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the October 18th, 2023 Litchfield School Board meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Review and revision of the agenda. Do we have any changes?
So there are a couple of links that have been livened up for you, and some of those are in the non-public section, so they're not livened up for the public, obviously, but other than livened up links and a few rearrangements since our folks from First Student are here, the agenda stands.
Okay. Great. And for the consent agenda, is there any request to have any of our committee updates discussed or for feedback in old business? There's been different updates if everyone, I assume, has read the committee reports that are associated, but no need for discussion?
No.
All right, moving on to summary of non-public actions from October 4th, 2023. Ms. Ames made a motion to approve the September 6th, 2023 non-public session minutes. Ms. Harrison seconded the motion and the motion passed 4-0-1. Mr. Shoemaker abstained. Ms. Harrison made a motion to approve the leave of absence requested by Jennifer Sweet due to the birth of her child. Mr. Cutter seconded the motion and the motion passed 5-0-0. And then...
So what I'm reviewing in the non-public minutes is not what we just said. So...
is there a vote?
There's not a recorded vote. There was a discussion, but I'd have to go back to the source minutes because I don't have, what Jan provided us is just that there was a discussion.
Okay. All right, we'll have to discuss that in non-public.
Thank you.
Moving on to presentations and recognitions, I'd like to welcome Miss Michelle Munson to the front. If you want to sit at our little table with a little microphone there. And she is here from the New Hampshire School Board Association. They have contractor, they use Bryan Group, is that correct?
Yes.
And you are here to discuss the superintendent search and leading us through that and what a timeline would look like.
Okay. I'm glad to meet you all and see you again, Mike. It's been forever.
I know it has, Michelle. Good to see you.
And so the Bryan Group does have a contract with the School Boards Association, and we're currently doing, I think, 6 searches in New Hampshire. And I have been doing so for about 6-7 years, I think. And our process is put together by Dr. Bill Bryan, who worked for many, many years for Fortune 500 companies, the military, the government, doing studies on leadership. And as he became a granddad, he just had a little more time and decided that maybe schools could have better leaders. And so he revamped his process and a lot of his research and set up this company to help school districts and colleges and different places find leaders in the educational forum. And so our process, we have probably a lot of the same elements that districts are used to, but we vary greatly from traditional search strategies, and I'll go through some of those with you. One of the things that we try to do based on Dr. Bryan's research and our process is to take away bias in the application and candidate process, and we pride ourselves on being a group that tries to find the exact fit for the organization, and we put whatever search committee the district puts together into a series of learning steps to help them be able to determine exactly what they're looking for and then how to find it. And so this was a PowerPoint, but I figured the group was so small it's just easier to do it this way. And are you all familiar with the contract that the School Boards Association, so I don't have to go through that. Essentially, we've meted it out in that it would probably take 3 to 4 months, depending on the process and the area, from start to finish. And we've been able to get that down to a month, 2 months, depending on, again, what the district is looking for and how quickly they want to move forward. Essentially, there's the figuring out, when you want to have your new superintendent on board. We find in New Hampshire, most people want them like January, February, so they can be there for the vote and be part of that process. We put together a series of meetings where we work with what the district wants to do for a search committee. And based on that, we put the committee through some training in roles and competencies and how to work together as a group. And then we create a posting, and then we train them on how to review applications in relation to their decided upon criteria. And then we do a series of interviews. The first is a combination of questions that are put together by the search committee and some introductory guided storytelling opportunities. And through that, what we do is sort of a advancement on the behavioral interviewing techniques, where we ask the applicant to share a story about their career, and we interrupt, pose questions till people get crazy. And what we try to do is to have the search committee, by reviewing and analyzing the responses, look for some of the behavioral strategies that we've trained them in order to be able to ascertain if this is how they behaved before, this is what they were thinking, this is what they did, to be able to share with them, this is what we think the candidate will do in the future. Then they hone it down to a couple of 3, 4 finalists. We put them through what we call the long guided storytelling strategies, which is 2 to 3 hours of guided storytelling and interruptions, and where the search committee again is looking for the desired behaviors and skills that these people possess, and from that, the committee would then make its recommendation to the board. During the process, we look for who and what in the community you want to be aware of as your stakeholders, how you plan to engage them. Some districts decide to put a special page on their website. Others, we during each meeting, we again, it's a subcommittee of the board, so we take minutes, we have information. We have handouts that we give the committee members, and those are, again, open meeting. You can post them and have them available. We involve the administration, all the school board members, and the final search committee in determining sort of a fit exercise. From that, we work to help put together the roles and competencies. We also can do surveys, forums, focus groups, whatever the community seems to work, because some things work better in some places than others. We've been, in some districts, they want to record everything, and that's fine, until we get to the discussion of the applications, and for that we go into non-public. We do record the interviews for internal use, in case a person can't come to a meeting, and to have. And then once the finalists are determined, we destroy the semifinalists and keep the finalists so that the board members can hear, any board member who is not on the search committee can hear the full complement of what the applicant presented. And some districts, we've done really rural ones, and they create a oh, my mind just went blank, the QR code, and they would put it on a post at the dump, and people would come and put their phones on it and be able to get the surveys from places like that, because they're just so rural and this is where everyone goes, in order to engage the public as much as anyone wants to do. So we can put all that together. Again, I've mentioned the roles, the competencies. We look for leadership styles. We ask the group to determine what would be, some kind of a derailer, that if in fact an applicant, candidate came forward and, looked like it was a stepping stone, or some districts say, if they've never been in a rural school district and they're applying to our district and we're, right next to Canada, I don't think we want them. So, automatic kind of a question mark that would maybe derail it unless they were shining in lots of other ways. And then we really look for the fit, the fit with the students, the fit with the community, and certainly the fit with the goals and mission and vision of the districts. We put all that together into a posting. We give the applicants 4 or 5 weeks to get their application materials in. We currently use School Spring, and what we do is the applications all file into them, and then we create a secure folder that the committee members can go in and review the applications as they come in, so they're not handed a stack of paperwork to go through at a meeting. And then we meet, determine who we want to speak to, go through the interview process, and then start the whole thing. So that's sort of the whole thing. Questions, specifics?
Does anyone on the board have any questions?
Seems very thorough.
I'm sorry?
Seems very, very thorough.
One of the things that I'll be asking is, what you plan to do for a search committee. I mean, some boards say, hey, we're it. Others say, oh, we want a representative group from the community, and, and pull that together and let us know who that is. And then we work with whoever the connecting person is in the district. And we're really clear that the search committee is the recommending. They aren't selecting the superintendent. They're doing all the hard work for the board to go through the applications and then recommend. Probably for people on the search committee, I would say you're looking at 20 to 30 hours of time, and fitting that into a multi-grouped series of people is difficult, but we make it work for everyone. We can certainly do online. We had to do that for a couple of years. So that's the process. And, my hope is that, the sooner you start, we can accommodate not having to be too busy in December, because no one wants to go to meetings in December. And often the first interview takes place on site, because they want the applicant to have a sense of the community and they want to meet them face to face. But the longer guided storytelling, the 2 or 3 hour ones, we have them, be via Zoom, and then the committee goes dark and they're just watching and looking for all the different ways that they're accommodating, hopefully.
Great.
So, how soon do you think you could put a committee together?
So I've already had a few preliminary meetings with our HR Director of Human Resources, who's in the back there, listening in. And so I think we've roughly talked about, as a board, wanting this sooner than later. Your January timeline, wanting to have somebody in place, is about right. Compared to prior searches that we've done in the past, what you've said lines up pretty well with what has been done in the past. More of an in-house process than using a consultant, but I think it seems to align pretty well with the pace of when to place the ad and when to have, first interviews and when the search committee should be meeting. Our selection committee for the last search consisted of the human resources director, business administrator. At the time, it was only one principal, one school administrator, but a conversation, and I'm saying this for board awareness as well, that we had is we thought all three principals should be on the search committee. So they each represent, one of the things we heard in negotiations, which isn't confidential, so I can repeat it, is each school is a family and we're all one community, but each family has their own representative.
Absolutely.
And so
Needs.
we want to make sure that each school feels like they have a voice, and have some input. A student, a teacher from each of the three schools, a parent, if there was an assistant, I'm sorry, so Kayla would probably be on it, right? The assistant to the superintendent, for administrative purposes.
It's up to
In
you.
the past, I think Michelle has served. Barb?
Yeah.
Barb served on it.
So some admin
Superintendent's
support.
assistant.
Yeah, admin support. We did not have a board member on the prior search, but I indicated that I thought pretty strongly we should have a board member on. I don't think all five of us should be on it. I think one person could represent the board on that very broad search committee. And we can talk about who that should be at some point, but I think we have some of our homework done,
Great,
which is good. And so we're ready to kind of jump in and get going.
I can craft a little invite that I've used that, would outline some of the, the responsibilities and the time frame. And, you could just send it out to the
Perfect.
people that you want to include.
Great. All right, well, we appreciate you coming. Any other questions before I?
I guess I just have one. So in terms of the team on your side, like who's working, how big of a team are we working with? Is it one person?
You'll be
or-
working with me.
Okay.
I consult with the rest of our team as needed.
Gotcha.
And if anything happens, someone fills in. And Dr. Bryan is always on call if you want to bring in the big guns. So, so he's available. And, yeah, he lives in Nevada. Last year, he had 100 inches of snow in one weekend in his on his house, around his house. And it didn't melt until the middle of June. It was insane. It was really insane, yeah. But
From the,
we did have the phone working.
From the search proposal that was provided to us, it looks like NHSBA, along with the Bryan Group, recently did the Hudson Superintendent search, the Londonderry Superintendent search, the Derry Superintendent search, Portsmouth, Hampton,
Greenland.
Raymond. So it sounds, and those were all within the last since 2018. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. And then last year we did Fall Mountain, Lebanon, Hinsdale, and another one. My mind just went blank. Sorry.
That's okay.
But yeah, they've done several.
Claremont. Say those ones right.
No, we didn't do those. We did Claremont 2 or 3 years ago. I think 5 years ago now, actually. Time flies.
Well, thank you for coming in and
Great.
giving us an overview. I think it was good for us to sort of have this conversation. As vice chair, Tina and I had the conversation about should this be in public or non-public, and we wanted to make this as transparent as possible for the public to see, so that's hence why you're on TV and the whole
Okay.
town. Yeah, I don't know if you knew that, by the way. But we wanted to try and make this as transparent as possible. So we appreciate you coming in and
Great.
giving us your time. And we will discuss the contract in non-public and then get back to you shortly.
And then I'll send out, maybe to you, Heidi?
Yep.
Just the brief intro type of thing that you could
Absolutely.
easily, our goal is to make it as easy for you as possible.
Appreciate it.
And then times are filling up. So, if you could.
We're ready to jump.
Yeah.
We wanted to have this meeting, and then I think we're ready to make some
And then just email me whatever.
quick
you
choices. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
All right, and since I still don't have internet, we are going back to our trusty paper agenda. We also today have the CHS report, so I'll invite Principal Hess up to the microphone.
Doug, do you want first students to go first?
Are you waiting for students still, or? Yeah, so why?
Oh, I'm sorry, I've got a paper
Yeah, we
copy,
have the
so.
students coming at 6, so.
Okay, perfect, then why don't we have first student, come on up.
So for new board members, we've worked closely with this management team for a number of years. So Sean has been with First Student in this office, in this role for 6 years?
Yeah, almost 7 years, coming upon 7 years.
And then David Fairweather. David Fairweather, sorry, has come in since we've been working together. But David is sort of the regional rep. So they're here to talk about the bus contract. We've shared the information with the board. And so you can see the original 5-year contract that was signed for starting in the 2020 year. And then we have the extension letter and a spreadsheet that shows some of the numbers relative to that. So I'll let them talk a little bit about their proposal, and then we'll go with questions and answers. And before they leave, we want to talk electric buses, which is a separate piece, right? So, but for right now, we should talk about regular buses.
Okay, all right, thanks, Mike. Dave Fairweather, I'm the area general manager, and thanks for your time tonight. Yeah, so I know our extension proposal, has some significant price increases in it. And, really just want to give you a flavor for, where we're coming from as we put that together. The school bus business has changed significantly since 2019 when we last put together a contract with you folks, and certainly post-COVID. All industries have felt the pressure, the labor market pressures. We're certainly a part of that. Our driver compensation pressures have been immense the last few years, and we've responded to it as a company. And Sean will talk a little bit about our relationship with the Litchfield School District and the service we provide and the great partnership we've had for many years now. But I think behind the scenes, we've reacted to the driver comp pressures, and we've been able to stay well-staffed at his location. And we all see the stories around the state and around the country in terms of driver shortage. This is one location where we've been able to stay ahead of it a little bit. Just to give you a flavor, our wages this year are 26% higher than what we had modeled, all right, for Litchfield, all right, when we put this together back in 2019. That's just wages alone. Since that contract was signed in 2019, we began to offer 401k program for our employees, okay? All in the spirit of retention and recruiting drivers, and it's, like I said, it's been working. Our 401k contribution is $1 per hour for every hour worked. So layer that on top of our wage, right? And now we're at 31% higher than what we had planned, all right? And then we have the other pressures, right? The inflationary pressures. When I talk about inflation, I think about maintenance and parts. I mean, parts costs for us are up about 20%, tires, batteries, things of that nature. Fuel, all right, obviously a big driver. Fuel volatility, I think when we put together this program in 2019, we modeled in year 5, we expected diesel fuel to be at about $3 a gallon. That's not working. So, these were all, I just wanted to give you a flavor of kind of what the contributors are and what the business reasons are behind our extension proposal. We also have, our collective bargaining agreement is expiring next June, all right? So, we do kind of have that hanging out there as well. So we know the Teamsters, our drivers are all Teamsters. We know the Teamsters will be aggressive when we get to the bargaining table. So, we also had to think about that a little bit as we put together this extension proposal. In sum, we need to right-size the pricing going forward. Just to kind of give you a flavor of, and you may already know this, but, these are all public openings, but, some of the other contracts we handle in New Hampshire here that we've had to sit down at the table in the last year, because these are a lot of contracts that kind of were born about the same time the Litchfield contract was, have had a lot of difficult discussions, but, Hooksett, for example, they're paying $5.11 a bus right now. Timberlane's at $4.76. Chester's at $4.85. We just had a public opening at Salem, and multiple bidders there. The low bidder there is at $4.60 a bus. Okay, so we're not picking on you. Okay, this is really the direction that things are going. And again, I mean, we wouldn't feel comfortable talking about this unless we felt like we were providing a high level of service locally, and we had a good partnership with you guys, and we hope that the rubber's met the road in that regard, and help support our extension proposal here. So I don't know, Sean, you want to talk a little bit about the relationship we've had and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I never met any of you guys, which is a great thing. These guys don't know who I am, because I try to be the silent partner of the district and just provide excellent service and buses that are on time, and every day, every trip is covered. And I pride myself on that, and so does my staff and all my drivers. When I came into Litchfield almost 7 years ago, that wasn't the case. Things were kind of rough. But since I've been here, we've never canceled a sports trip on you guys. We've never been late to a sports trip. Everything is covered. Whatever you guys have asked, we deliver, whether it's above and beyond the contract. Same thing with your routes. Not saying it doesn't go without hiccups, because hiccups happen, but there is a driver assigned to every route. You guys also have the support of being at the largest location in New Hampshire, so I've got another 130 to 40 drivers that are available to assist when needed, when a hiccup does come into play. First Student has been the provider of Litchfield for close to 20 years, and we're hoping that will continue. No secret, I'm sure you've seen on the news, that surrounding districts don't have this luxury. Other school bus companies are calling up saying, we're no longer doing trips. We're no longer going to this school anymore. Neighboring towns don't have enough drivers. They're putting routes together, and these kids are on buses for an hour plus because that's the only way they can get kids home. Or they tell them, we'll do trips, but it's only going to be at 4:30, 5 o'clock when it's over, when home to school is over, or we're not going to do trips at all. That's nothing you guys have ever encountered since I've been at the helm of the location. I would say our partnership is as strong as it's ever been. I talk to Doug and Mike monthly, obviously more if needed, but we check in with each other monthly, and happy to say most of the time we're good. We got nothing this month. Think things are going great. So once again, I'm happy that you guys don't know who I am, because I'd like to be the silent partner in the district that just delivers and don't have any questions on whether the kids are getting to school or not.
Hopefully that gives you a little backstory on where we're coming from, and we're here to answer any questions you have.
And just if I may, because I want to vouch for what Sean said. So we started the monthly meeting, I think it's the second Thursday at 9:30, and the purpose was to make sure we maintain regular communication that apparently didn't exist before. And there were some early meetings that lasted an hour because we needed to make sure that we covered all the topics that we needed to do. Michelle was a part of the team also because she was doing some of the routing information. She knew it pretty well. And so what we've got is a half an hour. Often we'll text each other and say, you got anything for us? Because we're good. And they reply back with, we're good too. So we agree that we can better use our half hour. Things are rolling very smoothly. And so even when we meet, very problem-solving focus, like, hey, this issue's out there or whatever, and we just figure that out and move forward. So it really has evolved into a very good spot. And another piece is, so David's telling you what the rates are. I will tell you that in South Central Superintendents, we had a conversation about bus rates, and we started to do some comparisons, and the information that's being shared is accurate to what I'm looking at on a spreadsheet that was collected across the region. So as much as we gasp at the rate increase that we're looking at, we still are under other districts, and and we continue, as Sean said, we're still doing the transportation. There were superintendents in the room who said, we no longer have middle school athletics. We just say to parents, take your kid to the event because we can't handle that with busing. So we have not been in that position. We've had a better situation for ourselves. So I just want to vouch for what I'm hearing on the other side and then what we're experiencing on this end. And you're new to it all. Any other thoughts, or am I off base on any of that?
No, not off base. We talk about talking once a month, but it's quite often where I talk with either Shauna or Becky multiple times within a month, sometimes not at all within a month. But what I always appreciate is that they're very quick either to answer the call when I actually call up. It doesn't always go to voicemail, which is nice. And if it does go to voicemail, I get a phone call back usually within an hour. And if we're talking, that's something that needs multiple phone calls, and I kind of press the urgency of it, they go along with that too. They say, okay, we'll work on that. We'll work on meeting your time demands for what the information you need to know in order for us to make decisions. So that part's been very helpful.
You don't have Sean's cell number?
No, I do. He picks up in different areas. So, yeah.
I was gonna say, you need that.
We can post it.
No, we're not gonna post it. We're not gonna post it, Sean.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
So you said your collective bargaining agreement is up this year?
Yeah, it
How-
expires in June of 24.
How long of a term does that run for?
5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
So we signed 1 year off collective
Always,
bargaining agreement?
So would that further impact these rates?
No, what we've offered is what we've offered, yeah.
Any other questions?
And then I know that we haven't talked about it yet, but we're about to talk about electric buses, and if a program such as that were to come into play for us, how would that work? Once we sign this contract, are we locked in at these prices with diesel buses for 5 years, or is how do we move forward participating in a program like that, and how does that affect?
Yeah, there's a lot of ifs there, right? It
Right,
depends,
right.
what happens with the grants and the funding and how much funding comes through if awarded, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think the idea is obviously if, I know Litchfield's, they were frankly the first district we worked with that expressed a high interest in the EVs. And, we've applied in the second round. And in the second round we applied. It's more of a competitive grant. And this current round coming up, right, it's going to be kind of another lottery type thing. And hopefully we can apply on your behalf again. But it's one of those things, Christina, where, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Obviously, I'm sure you want to keep things cost neutral if we introduce, at least cost neutral
Yeah.
if we introduce electric buses into the fleet, so. But we got to bundle it all up, the cost and the funding and the infrastructure and everything else that goes with it. But we're excited about it. We really want to be we have as a company, we have an objective to introduce 30,000 electric buses by 2035. So we've introduced quite a few in Canada already, in the coldest reaches of Canada, and they seem to be working well. So, we're excited about that initiative.
And a
So-
reminder to the board on the electric bus that, so the attraction to us was with the middle school project and the solar array coming online soon, that the electric buses can actually serve as a battery storage system. So we envision them being stored on site. That's a difference, right? So they're used to having their drivers at the yard in Nashua, but, you know, we're hoping to have these buses on site so that they can plug into our microgrid and be able to serve as an electrical source and a battery storage within. And so, you know, we're actually taking the whole concept of electric bus to a different level than what First Student would be doing in other districts. That's why I think Dick applied in round 1, and then First Student applied in round 2 and is proposing to do the same in round 3. The paperwork that's attached basically is a verification that we've informed the board, had a discussion, that we have your blessing to continue to do that. That was not a requirement in step 1 or 2, although we did share with the board. The board was aware of everything that we were doing with it. But now we do have to certify that we've had that discussion. You've been able to ask your questions about it. I think initially we were looking at 2 buses, and because, you know, we were just saying it's more of a demonstration project. I mean, if they gave us 10 buses or 9, whatever our fleet ends up with, that would be fine also. But that's not what the original ask was, so.
But again, that's, you know, we don't know how far in the future that would be, but if that were to fall in the middle of a contract term, I mean, would we be renegotiating portions of the contract for that, or?
Not necessarily. I mean, you know, we'd have to, you know, kind of bake it all together, right? And see, you know, my thought is, you know, if we can replace some of your existing buses, all right, with an electric vehicle and keep things cost neutral, that's kind of our vision going in, all right?
So, I mean, I think the one thing that when our voters look at this, they're going to say, that's all well and good, but we're looking at enormous increases, which again, understand that is across the board, right? But
Yeah.
I think if we're going to be looking at electric buses, the idea behind that would be looking at ultimately cost savings, I would think. As much as I like the, you know, the cause of,
Yeah.
you know, clean energy and stuff like that, that a lot of
Yeah.
voters don't necessarily care about that. They care about the
And
cost.
Matt, the kind of the economics 101 of it is, here's the cost of a diesel bus. The electric bus is higher. The grant money helps to level that so that you're able to get the electric. If they were First Students buses, they're plugging them in instead of filling them up with diesel. If there's something that we have on our microgrid that might result in something that we could talk about down the road. But really, the effort is to show that really this is a viable thing. I so appreciate that you talked about Canada, because everybody says electric buses in the Northeast, that's not going to go, it's too cold. And the answer is actually no, they work very well. Just like all the Teslas you see on the highway, you know, it is technology that will function for us. And I also think as a smaller town, you know, 3 miles wide, 7 miles long, our ability to zip electric buses around and then recharge is different than a regional district, you know, a Conval, which is huge. It's like 70 square miles, you know, it's totally different. So this really gives us a much better ability to bring that.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think it's just important for us to understand from a contract perspective, right? We're going to be implementing new equipment, right? And we don't know much about that equipment at this point, but I just want to make sure that we know that there's a mechanism in the contract that allows for us to evaluate that if we're pursuing that at this point. You know, pursuing electric buses, like if we don't know how that's going to play into the contract, or it's not going to play within the next 5 years, that's fine, but we shouldn't be looking at implementing that within 5 years if that's the case. Right? I mean, there has to be something in the contract, because like a lot of times we look at contracts and then we're like, okay, we didn't foresee those things, right? So we're just trying to, I think we need to make sure we're aware of that.
Or no, which is we just stick with the diesels and we pay the rates, right? So.
Yeah, and I'm not, I like the idea of the electric. I'm just, you know, we're basing a whole contract, a 5-year contract on diesel.
That's correct. And there could be, but I think everybody's effort is to achieve cost neutrality with it, so that's what would apply. If there were cost savings, we can certainly go back. I mean, again, we have a good enough relationship, we could talk about
Yeah,
that.
I guess that was my concern too, is that if there are cost savings, if we can plug them into our microgrid and not pay for diesel fuel, I want to be able to negotiate that out of the contract.
And part of our benefit of plugging into the microgrid, I'm trying to remember exactly, the buses almost serve as a way to help buffer like the demand charges, because they become part of the microgrid. So, so we benefit from that in ways that aren't going to be seen in the transportation side. They might be seen on the building side, because, you plug the bus in at 5 o'clock, and it now is, if I remember correctly, I think it's able to add energy into the grid potentially. So, you have this sort of back and forth piece that we benefit on another side of it that's different. And that's where it gets really complex. So what's the impact on this contract versus the other benefit that we're getting?
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't think we've seen the proposed contract yet, have we? We have an understanding of what the rates are gonna, we've talked about what the rates
Right.
are looking
So
at.
my understanding is an extension of the contract, so the contract stays the same, the wording of the contract stays the same, and what's changing is the pricing,
Yeah.
extending it for 5 years.
I mean, in most cases, the contract remains pretty similar, but, if there's certain things we want to talk about in it, we can discuss that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I haven't seen the contract, so that's why I'm looking at the one here, but it would be nice to have a provision in there that says if electric buses become a reality for Litchfield, this will warrant a discussion and an analysis of expenses, even if we decide to do nothing with it. But at least it's a agreement to have a conversation,
Yep, that's
to be
fair.
able to leave that open, because that I think is one of the reasons we're pursuing it, right?
I'm not prepared to vote on this extension tonight.
No, I don't think we're being asked to vote on the extension tonight, but I think we are being asked to approve that the board is aware of pursuing the electric buses, correct? Me signing
Yeah, and
that
that's just
authorization?
pursuing that, I don't think if you pursue that, that doesn't bind you by, there's no contract
No,
with
that's
that.
just
I mean, even if you get,
applying on your behalf
Okay.
to get some grant money, because electric buses cost
Right.
3+
Yeah.
times the regular diesel
Right,
bus
right.
cost, so just trying to offset that.
Yep, so with that,
So there's no cost to the district of applying for any of this. This is all. okay.
I can assure you, if we decide later to reject, let's say we win the buses and we say, yeah, never mind, somebody else will gobble them up in a heartbeat.
Oh, sure,
So
absolutely,
It
yeah.
is highly competitive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's no risk to us
Right.
to pursue.
Cool.
okay, does anyone have any issue with me signing on behalf of the
No.
board?
Nope.
Indicating our awareness. Perfect.
We are aware.
You're very aware.
And those are printed in your to-sign folder, ready for you
Oh,
when you get to them.
so efficient. Okay.
And just a question, is that, the application of the grant, is that that's through you guys?
We're filing on behalf of
On
you
behalf
to
of
the
us,
state.
okay.
The
That's
grant is offered by the EPA,
Yeah.
so it's a
Gotcha.
federal grant.
That would be
I think
granted
it's
to
part
the
of
district?
Infrastructure
Okay.
funds, and it would be,
Which we've applied for twice.
Twice.
Right.
Once you have done for us, and then once Dick Henry did for us.
Right.
Understood.
Any other questions for our first student?
I want to just verify with Doug, so I totally appreciate not voting tonight. You're looking at it. You have the original contract with the letter and the spreadsheet information. But we're in the budgeting process, so
Yes.
we need to, I think our next meeting is the day before we kick off budgeting. So we would need any questions to be sent to us so that we can get those answered, because we do need to have some handle on this sooner than later. What deadline or what date would you have for?
well, right
decision?
now, as a placeholder, I have the new rates,
Yeah.
because no matter who we sign with, the rates are gonna go up.
Right.
So that's what's in the budget right now, is based off the new rates, whether it's be sports or whether it be regular ed transportation, that's the placeholder.
Yeah, and I see, the rates include a quote for 8 buses rather than the 9 buses.
So I have the 9, and I put the 8 just because we talked about 8.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so-
I'd like to see ridership and, what we're seeing on the buses currently before, to see if reducing by a bus makes sense or not,
Yep.
or we should have that discussion too.
We can look into that again, because after COVID, there was more parents that were driving, but I think that's
Right.
dwindled a little bit. Last year, there was room to switch down to 8, and so, but if there's more parents not driving, then it makes sense to look at it again.
Okay.
I admittedly didn't have time to read through the 22-page contract since yesterday. So, you highlighted the fact that other companies are having trouble with staffing for trips and stuff like that. And I know you've buffered into your numbers what you're anticipating for your collective bargaining negotiations. Could the outcome of your negotiations, and again, I haven't read the 22-page contract, so it probably does set forth right in there, but could you end up in a similar position depending on the outcome of your negotiations where we would have trouble with, just based off of their agreed upon?
I would say no, only because we've been historically the highest paid school bus drivers in New Hampshire, and as wages inherently they go up and not down. So if they go up, I would like to think that would increase our driver staffing.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That's my last question.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for coming in and talking with us. We really
very much.
appreciate your time.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you guys. Take care.
Thanks.
We're gonna slide into the CHS report with Principal Hess.
Yep, and I'd like to welcome up members of our first robotics team as well. They're going to kick us off, tell us a little bit about their grant award they received and their competition last weekend. Grab a seat. I'll let you take the lead.
All right. Campbell has had a first robotics program since 2010, so we're on our 14th season. We're a small group of about a dozen students. Last year we had 4 graduating seniors. All have gone off to college, 3 have gone to WPI, so a great group of kids, hardworking. The team itself is open to anybody in the school, particularly kids who are interested in engineering, programming, business, and arts, and basically anybody who wants to join us. So we're excited about that, and we wanted to thank you for your contributed support over the last 14 years. And the kids do a great job. They really run the team. The mentors are there to kind of just guide them and answer any questions that they have during the slide. Start off with Bridget. Bridget's a junior, and she's been running our business team for the last few years, and then we'll turn it over to Caitlin, who's a graduating senior this year, and has also received a scholarship to a UNH school if she so chooses this year.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
So this past August and September, I worked on writing the New Hampshire DOE grant for robotics teams to get additional
Please
funds.
sit down.
And with that, we received $6,265 for this 22-23 school year, and these funds can be put towards robotics kits, parts and tools, for the coach stipend, for our uniforms and transportation to competitions, and this overall is going to really help our team with other sponsors we get, like saving up that money if we ever get to go to regionals or worlds, and it's just going to help us become better as a team and be able to get more tools to help us do better.
Awesome.
So, I am part of the mechanical team with the robotics team. So we work to build the robot. Our robots, I don't know if any of you guys have seen them, but they are like about 2.5 feet by 3 feet by like 4 feet tall usually. They're pretty big. We have normally about like 6 to 7 weeks to build the robot from when we get our challenge to when we're competing. And we competed last spring for the regular season. We did not go to finals or like anything like that last year, but during our off-season event on October 7th, we went to Governor's Cup, and we came home with this. We actually went as a team of 6 people. 5 of them were new members, and I went, and I was the only returning member that was able to make it to Governor's Cup. Yeah, so we were very new. We ended qualifiers. Qualifiers were rough. It was not great, but we got chosen by the first seeded alliance, and we wound up finishing, I can't think of what they're called right now, but we ended up finishing undefeated in the championship part of it. Yeah, sorry. And yeah, so we came home with this lovely cup.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your robot did?
What? Our robot did,
Yeah,
yeah,
what was the
sorry.
challenge? What the challenge
So
was?
the robot this year, the challenge were to pick up either like these inflatable cubes or these traffic cones. Our robot focused on picking up inflatable cubes, so we'd drive over to a little shelf that a human would load the piece into. We'd pick up the cube, drive it back across the field, and put it on different shelves that were right in front of the driver, so you were driving towards yourself and placing it. And then at the end of the game, there is a little like balancing table almost right in front of you that the robots had to balance on.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, when you applied for, you applied for the grant, you said,
Yeah.
how much time did that take you?
So there was writing like a diagram of how much you want funds to go to for each thing, along with writing in like about 5 different sections. It took a couple of meetings, so maybe like 2 to 4 hours somewhere between them.
Very cool.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
My understanding, so I don't know if those of you know, I work with Mary Frank, so I hear a lot about you guys on a regular basis. That 6,000 is a lot of money for you, right? That's similar to what an entrance fee is for something like a first competition that normally you would have to raise those funds, right? And this is a huge help for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
So we've been very, very lucky. So the district has, this year has applied $5,000,
Great.
which is slightly lower than in the past, which is understandable. Schneider Electric is one of our biggest sponsors at $6,000, which covers our event fees, which is all of the, to actually get into the event. And then the grant provides another $6,000, and then we also send out a bunch of letters
Yeah.
that the students write and send out to all the
For
places
donation.
around town.
Yeah.
Every little donation helps.
Yeah. That's great.
That's wonderful.
How many competitions are you looking at doing this year? Do you know? How many are there usually?
There's normally 2 qualifying competitions.
Okay.
And then if we get enough, it's called district points, so it's how many you rack up. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. And then if you have enough, we'd go to the district championship.
Well, good luck this year.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Sounds like
Great work.
exciting stuff.
Thank
How
you
many
so
are on the team now? Is there 12? Is that what I heard you say? 12?
Back up to 12.
You're back up to 12? Good.
Good.
Good, good. Well, thank you guys.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for the update. Congratulations.
We'll keep watching.
And just to piggyback on, Jason, they were mentioning, the business committee, the mechanical. Jason and I have been in talks. His idea is to kind of branch out and involve more people, work with our computer programming, work with our business teachers, and really expand the types of kids that join our first robotics team. So Jason's going to come to one of our faculty meetings and talk with our staff, just
great.
talk about the different opportunities. So they're doing a really great job. I want to touch on just a couple things real quick in my report, and then I think we're going to be like perfect time-wise for our student representatives. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm gonna pause you and let poor Anthony come
Yes.
sit. You actually have a spot to sit. And I'm gonna give you a paper agenda. I might have scribbled on it, ignore it if I did. I don't think I wrote any bad words on it, so. Have a seat, and this is a good part for you to listen in on.
So first, I just wanted to comment, this is my first report. I did write for the last board meeting. I wanted to mention again Lucas Chu being a semifinalist for the National Merit Scholarship. He has now officially applied to be a finalist. We finalized that process, so we're rooting for for Lucas there to get that. I want to update on our CAG program, our new advisor program, our Cougar Academic Growth. I remember when I presented that idea in April of last school year, we talked a lot about how muddy it was going to be, and we anticipated a lot of hiccups, and I am here to report how pleasantly surprised I am how smooth the beginning of the year has gone with starting this new program. So just a quick little background, Cougar Academic Growth. On Mondays and Fridays, we have our traditional kind of advisory time where we build community, we get the student supports that they need, a time for them to kind of connect with a small group of students. On Mondays, they have a conversation with their advisor. The advisor looks at their grades, talks about what supports and help they need that week, and they sign them up for what Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday will look like during that time. The first 3 weeks of school, we did a focus just on our Campbell core academic values, our work study practices, and getting a start on digital portfolios. So we used all 5 days, well, 4 days because they were short weeks, but we used all that time on just kind of starting the school year with everyone on the same page about who we are as a building, what we value in those work study practices, and then kind of this rollout that I'm doing with digital portfolios for students. Then our phase 2 is we started this Cougar Academic Growth where they were signing up, and it was a relatively smooth transition to that. And now we're in the process of our third phase, which we're going to roll out in about a week and a half, where we're going to add 1 day every other week where clubs can meet. So that'll kind of help our participation with the kids that can't always meet after school because of athletics. So it gives one more opportunity for students to do that. So it has gone relatively well. We've been able to open up with our small groups out of the counseling den as well, with our social worker and our mental health clinician running some programs. Everyone's really involved in this time. And then our fourth kind of rollout, which we're going to get to eventually, is, we've had some teachers and some students were like, well, can we do a CAG where like I teach someone how to crochet? And I'm like, absolutely, like we'll get to that point. And some kids have some ideas for they want to do. So I think that'll be kind of the final iteration is, that every other week when clubs can meet, those students, again, it's that you have good academic standing, you're passing all your classes, you can then do these other activities as well. So it's gone really nice. I held a listening session last week with staff to get feedback from them, and then next week I'm going to open up and hold a listening session with students to get feedback from them as well, to kind of see areas that we can tweak and grow as we go. So I'm very pleased with how it's gone. Students have responded really well to a new, especially our seniors. I'll give them a ton of credit. This is a big change for them with how they spend their time in the building. They've received it really well, and it's going far better than I imagined. I wish Liz McDonald was sitting right there, because I remember we talked about how bad it was going to be, but it has gone really smoothly. She has commented it's gone really smoothly, so I'm really happy with how the rollout has gone. So that's kind of where we're at, and I highlighted some of our Golden Bell winners, our staff. Oh, and I wanted to touch one more thing. My newsletter, my weekly newsletter. So you're going to see 2 versions of my newsletter. I'm going to alternate weeks. Last week you saw the first edition where we do full reports from what's happening in the classroom. So our curriculum facilitators give updates for what's happening in all the classrooms. And then this week you'll see it's the shorter version, but we're going to bring, I'm calling them Cougar Callouts. We're going to do our highlight students and adults in the building who are nominated by their peers and stuff. So I'll alternate weeks with that, so we get a little a look at what's happening in the classroom, and then just kind of updates from me and celebrating some of the good people that we have around us at Campbell High School. So that's kind of where we're at CHS right now. Any questions?
No, I wrote back to you. I responded to
Yes, thank you.
your the longer update with what's happening in the classroom. I appreciated it because it gave me something to ask my kid about.
Yeah.
I don't get much information, as you might
From a
say.
teenager? No
I know,
way.
right?
Yeah.
Shocking.
Crazy.
But it was nice to be able to say, "Hey, I heard you're learning about this in this class. And
Yeah.
how's that going?"
It was interesting. I said to the curriculum facilitators, like, hey, 2 to 3 sentences, what's happening in your departments. And some gave me a quick, but then, poor Shannon Zepan oversees
Oh yeah.
all of the unified. So I was trying to figure out how I could format it best so that it read nicely and smoothly. But I think we're going to work on some of the kinks as we move forward. But it's a nice every other week update on what's happening in classrooms.
That's great.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Hess? And then we have like a whole posse of students that are here to represent tonight. So welcome back, guys, and welcome, Anthony. I'm turning it over to you. Do you have an update for us? It looks like you have a presentation.
Yeah. So we just got a quick presentation, just a few things that have been happening around Campbell so far. So yeah, first off, our new school board representative. So Anthony was recently selected. So he's going to be the ongoing school board representative here. But we're just helping out for this first one to make sure he's all set. So
Nice.
He can introduce himself.
I'm Anthony LaPlante. I'm a junior at Campbell High School. This is my first year being a school board representative.
Great. Welcome. We're not too scary, I promise.
Is this your first year on student council?
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Speaking of student council, do you guys want to talk about why you were a little bit late this evening?
Oh yeah. Well, I was we were at a central district conference meeting. So
Great.
In Pelham. So it was good. We got to meet all the other student councils to see like where they're at, and like we did like some team bonding stuff. So it was good.
Very cool.
Nice.
And are we hosting in December?
Yeah, December 6th, we are hosting the winter district meeting. So
Excellent.
And with Anthony's new role, so, because you were just selected, like you're hot off the press, right? So, but Mr. McDonough and Mr. Hess and I talked yesterday about meeting to make sure that he's got the support and the materials. We'll introduce him to Ms. Collins so that he's able to get, access and links in the whole 9 yards. So he didn't have that tonight, bear with him. He's literally got this last minute, but we're gonna make sure for the next meeting that he has everything in
Great.
it.
So are Aiden and Alex, are you staying on or are you leaving us?
so we're looking for a second representative
okay.
first, and then once if we can get a second one, we'll probably leave after that because
Whatever.
Peace out.
we got a little
Don't
bit to
take
do.
it personally.
Yeah, but for right now we'll be here with them. So
Okay. Good.
All right. So class of 2027 elections. Last week, Campbell had hosted their class of 2027 elections. This included class president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. And then also in these elections were like the 3 spots for student council representatives. And this was all like in the freshman class.
So I think now we're at 29 members of student
Wow.
council, around somewhere around there. So it's pretty good.
size.
Yeah. Sports records. So we're heading into the playoff seasons for a few of our sports. Like we have like last few games, but these are our records right now. We have all winning records. I know golf already finished. They had states. I think one of the girls won, or she did really well in it. So it's pretty good.
Playoffs start next week on the 24th is when playoffs officially kick off for fall
Okay.
sports.
Yeah. So we did a club fair a few weeks ago, and in this fair, like students were called down into the library by grade level, and then like they just got to like walk around, see like all the great clubs that Campbell has to offer, and then hopefully that like motivated them to join the clubs and get involved.
Try to get more engaging for everybody. And then lastly, what's next for Campbell? So these are just a few things that are coming up along with the Winter District Conference. But so Red Ribbon Week, so SAD, which is Students Against Destructive Decisions, they do an annual Red Ribbon Week. It just advocates against drugs. So they do like different dress-up days for that. And then Make a Difference, which it's coming up November. All 3 of the schools are doing that. So we collect canned goods and perishables to help donate to everybody in need in town. And then lastly, Senior Trick or Treat. This is just more something for like the seniors to like kind of reward them. So we've done this the last few years, and like the underclassmen, they get to decorate a bucket for like their advisory, and they put candy in it, and then the seniors just go around. Some like wear costumes, and we just like get candy from all the different classes. Like they're playing music in the halls. It's awesome. It's a good time. And that's really it. So.
Great.
Nice job.
Any questions from the board? All right, thanks. As we told them when they first came, feel free to jump in if you have questions. If we're talking about something, you're an active member of this board too, so feel free to jump right in.
All right.
All right, we are going to go ahead and move into community comment on agenda items. Is there anyone here from the community that would like to provide comment or input? Seeing none, we will go ahead and close community comment. We will have another opportunity for folks to contribute and provide comment either towards the end of the agenda or the 8 o'clock hour, whichever comes first. And I'm really hoping it's the end of the agenda like it was last time, so I'm going to keep moving us along.
Great.
Correspondence, I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chair. Thankfully, I don't have to do this.
I think it was kind of a quiet week, too.
Yeah.
Was it? There's a page and a half of correspondence.
Still feels like it.
Yeah. All right. So on October 6th, the board had an email from Jan Sullivan circulating the draft public and non-public minutes. October 10th, Heidi Ames circulating NHSBA letter of agreement and invoice for superintendent search, confirming attendance on tonight for tonight's meeting. Also on October 10th, responses from Holly Falzone, Matt Shoemaker, Peter Plansky, and Heidi Ames. Matt and Peter asked for information packets, and Heidi responded that the packets had been shared and then reattached them. October 10th, Doug Totten added a tab for the end-of-year encumbrances on the FY23 BA report. October 10th, response from Andrew Cutter inquiring about the cost of the gator that was encumbered at the end of last year. Response for Doug Totten, the cost of the gator was a base model around $10,000, we said?
9,000, a little over 9,000, yep.
Oops, lost my place. October 10th, Dan Mitchell, setting up a schedule for GMS project info sharing at Saturday soccer games at GMS. Responses from Matt Shoemaker, Andrew Cutter, myself, and Heidi Ames sharing their availability on upcoming Saturdays. October 11th, Heidi Ames informing board that member Andrew Cutter would not be in attendance this evening. October 12th, Peter Plansky received draft minutes sent on 10/5. October 13th, Ann Inamarati.
You got it.
Circulation of manifest for 10/18. October 16th, Kayla Collins circulating the agenda for 10/18. October 14th, Andrew Cutter questioning the status of the winter plowing contract. Response from Doug Taunton on October 16th. Response that we're all set for this year, awaiting a quote on a 3-year extension. October 17th, Mike Jetty, first student in attendance tonight to answer questions regarding the extending the bus contract. Responses from Peter Plansky regarding the bus contract and plowing contract. I sent an email last night, October 17th, with the summary notes from the NHSBA Delegates Assembly. Response from Andrew Cutter today, asking about the continuing resolution number 10, failure to pass. I responded to his question. I'll touch on that in my report. October 18th, Andrew Cutter with a summary of CIP committee meetings and budget committee meeting notes. And October 18th, also today, Doug Taunton shared the school district portion of the capital improvement plan. And that was it.
Thank you very much. Moving on to general business, we'll start with the superintendent's report.
So the first thing I want to do is apologize to the board. I updated the non-public action during this meeting. So I was emailing back and forth with Jan after the question that got raised, and she sent me my written notes, which were totally clear to me, but not clear to any other human who would look at them. And so I have fixed it on your agenda. So if you go back up in the agenda, you can see that it now says that it was a motion that was made by Mr. Cutter and a motion that was seconded by Mr. Plansky to hire NHSBA, and I have it as a 5-0-0 vote. Okay, so that was
how I remembered it.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it there, so I was making
And what I
sure.
was panicking over is I'm looking at what she has written, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't say there was a vote, but I couldn't get my hands on my notes, and she forwarded the notes to me, and I'm like, oh, yeah. So now it's clear, there was that motion, we have it on the agenda, and I apologize. It's part of talking and keeping track of everything and recording the minutes, so my bad on that.
Thank you.
So next up, I just want to talk about custodians, and what I've actually posted up here are all our job openings. So we had a resignation today from a custodian, and it's put us in a very difficult position. I want the board to hear it, and I want the community to hear it, because we currently have one custodian on second shift in each of the 3 buildings. That means if we have a custodian who calls out sick, takes a personal day, has a bereavement leave, we have no coverage at night. That may force us, and I need to be really clear, that may force us into shutting down a building and canceling activities. You know, we want to be good community partners, we want to have the scouts with us, we want to have rec league playing in our gyms, but we don't have the staff. And we have reached a critical acute position, to be very honest. And so I'm really appealing to the board with the situation that we're in and making sure, and appealing to the community. If you know anybody out there, we have openings. I want to go through the openings with you so that you understand the position that we're in. So at Griffin, we currently have 13 paraprofessional openings. 13. These are our littlest students. These are, in many cases, our more vulnerable population that our paraprofessionals are working with, and we have 13 positions that are open. In kindergarten, there are 2 paraprofessional openings in addition to the others. I believe that's an addition because they're listed separately. Second shift custodian, so that we're able to have somebody else in the building, and a lunch monitor is also needed. So anybody who knows of somebody who's willing to do this, I think what we're talking and what we're seeing is that in the past, people who were able to come into the school during the school day have now been able to assume online positions, and they're able to work from the convenience of home. That seems to be really putting a dent in our ability to. These were often filled with moms. They were mom's hours, right? Mom or dad. I don't want to be sexist with this, but they could come in and work while the child was at school and be there with the child, and that's just not something that we're currently seeing. So that's our need at Griffin. At the middle school?
If I could just add to
Oh,
that.
please.
So it would have looked very similar if we looked at it last year during kind of any month, maybe not as high as 13, but pretty close to that. You would have seen paraprofessionals on it. You would have seen custodians. So now they're going into their second or more year of just working with less support. Those are the people that are directly doing the job, but then everyone who surrounds them, the teachers, they have less support, and then the students have less support. So it's a trickle effect, and it's a widening effect of people who, if you have less support, you're doing more work, you're leaving more tired, and the job is still fulfilling, I think, because we get to work with kids, but it's harder.
Are we seeing similar trends with surrounding districts?
When I talk with superintendents, we're all in a very similar boat. So it's, in the past, it might be, okay, everybody's migrating to somewhere with a higher pay.
Mm-hmm.
We're just finding the population's not there to apply. So the number of openings that are existing, it's people are not applying for these positions. Looking at our middle school, we have 13 open positions for paraprofessionals. We've talked, and you've seen emails that have gone out from Principal Grantham about student behaviors, for example, at the middle school. But here are the number of open adult positions that could help to manage some of that, and they are, vacant. They don't have anybody in those roles. The custodian second shift, it's a 30-hour per week position, and then a second shift position, which is a full-time position. I think the full-timer is the one that became available today. So that's what sort of heightened, like we need to make sure that everybody understands this. We do need a girls' basketball coach, a food service technician, so somebody to work in the kitchen, lunch monitor. There was an email and Facebook post that went around about a lunch monitor and a reaction to student behaviors. But we're down people. That was a somebody who was filling in, and so there is that opening. We need a long-term sub in grade 5, starting in November for 6 weeks. And then, so that's for a leave of absence. We then have a long-term sub in grade 6 in language arts. That's been vacant since the start of the year. And that's being filled by teachers who are taking on a 6 block. So instead of personal planning time, they are filling into the classroom. The good news is they're certified teachers. The tough part is that it's 4 different people who are taking on one extra thing to do. And so they're filling in to that slot and giving up some of their planning time. We are compensating them, so it's not a freebie ask, but it's still not the ideal situation. The ideal situation is somebody to fill that slot. And then finally, in 8th grade, the board did approve a leave of absence starting in December. So I guess, that one's not current yet, but given the fact that we haven't been able to hire an English teacher since the start of the year, I'm worried about a math position from December to the end of the year and how we're going to fill that. Let me pause on the middle school. Doug, anything else I missed on it?
No, nothing you missed. I think some of those long-term subs are great positions for people who have taught before and maybe haven't taught for a year, to kind of come back, or people who are interested in teaching. I mean, you look at the 8th grade math, it's an exciting time of the year at the end of 8th grade as they kind of get to go throughout their graduation and I don't think all graduation here, but just the activities that they have at the end of 8th grade. So there's a lot of good that can happen if you come and work in those positions. So we're looking for people. Positive kids are there, and it'd be great to add positive people, adults there as well.
Talking with Joe today, who has just returned from a leave, and so he's got a daytime custodian who's out. So he has to come in at 7 a.m. to open the building, and then he has to cover the second shift to try to help out. So he's actually going through all 3 buildings. He's doing a portion of the 3 on the second shift in order to try to keep our head above water. That's a burnout factor on Joe. And, but again, you have one person on days. Somebody has to unlock the doors and get everything up and going, make sure all the systems are operating. And it's just one more ask on our management side also. Shifting over to Campbell High School, so there are 3 open positions for custodian on the second shift. The first shift, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. The second 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 shift, 7 a.m. those have been open since the start of the year. So we have one guy who's been servicing that entire building on second shift. So here's what it means. Teachers are asked to take their own trash out. You know, if you tie the bag up and put it out in the hall, that's a huge help because it's easier for one person to go along and pick up what's already out there. We do it in our office. You know, again, I'm not saying this, I'm vacuuming in the office. Like the rug needs to be vacuumed and I grab the vacuum and I vacuum. And we're all pitching in that way because that's what we're doing to get our way through this. The paraprofessional, actually it says one, Jacob. Do you think you only have one open paraprofessional or do you think there should be an S on that?
Yeah, I think that based upon, you know, what we have and what our need is, again, is the need different from the budgeted? Probably, but, you know, one S would be wonderful.
So we'll clarify, because I doubt it's 13-13-1. I could be wrong. But then we need a winter track coach, a spring track coach, an assistant varsity baseball coach, and an assistant JV baseball coach. The baseball numbers have exploded. It's awesome. But that means we can't put one coach with 28 kids. That's not going to work with bats. So we need to increase our supervision by increasing the coaching. We still have a science teacher opening. We still have a food service tech opening. And then district-wide grounds maintenance, we have one guy at this point. One guy who's done all the field striping with Dave helping, all the mowing, all the outside maintenance on our grounds. We have acres of land, and one guy's been taking care of all of that. And we always need subs, you know, teachers, pairs, nurses, custodian, food service, people who just are able to come in and sub as necessary. I mean, look at, Holly's even put, no experience required, pick your own hours. If you tell us you can come in for an hour, we'll figure that out. We'll just do what we need to do at this point, because we need bodies and help.
And one of those sub positions is a daily sub at the high school. We're down one of our daily subs, so that's in the building every day.
Yeah.
You know, regular 5 days a week position, so.
So with ground maintenance, we've lucked out that several of the coaches have also helped out at different times, just because it's just been needed. You know, coaches get paid, but I think it's more volunteer, you know, if you take their pay and divide it by their hours. So not only, you know, volunteering in the students' lives, but then they're also volunteering to make sure that the fields are good. And that is still with our one's ground person working. He works hard, and Dave, who is our director of buildings and grounds, is out there quite a bit too. So if people have been going to games, you know, the games have been able to happen because, you know, everything is ready to go. And that's taken, you know, a lot of one person's time, another person's time, and then a whole group as well, where if we can get a second person in there, it could relax the output of many people. So.
I had a question about the second shift. I know it's difficult right now to make changes because we're in the middle of a collective bargaining agreement with the LSSA. But what is the second shift? What are the hours? I'm assuming it's like after school.
It is after school. It actually varies by the school hours. So think of it as, you know, as the bus dismissals occurring, that tends to be the turnover point. So, you know, the 8-hour shift is enough time to get the school opened and doors unlocked and making sure that everything works for the day. And then they sort of pass the torch at the bus dismissal time to the second shift. So,
and not knowing, you know, what the qualifications have to be. Are there age requirements? Like, could this be an after-school job, for example, for a kid a high school student looking for something to do after school?
it can be. We've had students that have filled in. We have had, so any of our hourly employees are able to pick up extra time. So we've had food service workers who are willing to stay and do some of the trash in the evening, or sweep, or, you know, take care of bathrooms.
Just trying to think creatively about how we can
We are,
get the job done.
pick your own hours, tell us what you want to do. We do run into a problem with any of our salaried employees are not able to, it gets into a whole labor law conflict if you try to have a salaried person working into an hourly slot.
Okay.
So that is a problem for us, but hourly employees are able to shift into another hourly slot.
Have many hourly employees. Those are the ones we're looking for. Thank you.
Do a lot of your friends have jobs?
Yeah.
I'd say it's like 50-50. Like a
What are people doing for jobs these days? Like, there's sometimes when kids can't get jobs to save their lives, and then there's times where kids are like, running companies, so.
There's a lot of like Hannaford, like people stuff
Hannaford?
like that. Like
Mhm.
commercial. I know with too that the tree farm coming up too, and like Noel's, people were like a lot of kids work there.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of like seasonal jobs too, because like sports, going with sports
Right.
too, you're trying to
Right.
find the right
Right.
time to work. So
It's tricky.
Well, I'm just gonna throw this out. What's the pay? Because you can make $16.50 at Target.
Yeah, and definitely pay is a component, right? So, what we emphasize the whole package of what is available, but Target, I'm getting mailing from the post office that they're starting at $20 an hour.
Big push
right?
for the post office.
They're hurting on help. And so there's no doubt that pay is a factor, but I think the other factor is when some of the online remote work is paying comparable and you can stay at home and do it in your pajamas and throw a load of laundry in as you need to, except there's so many attractive pieces to that it's really put a dent in what used to be pretty favorable hours for people that no longer have that same level of favorability.
It's definitely a lot of factors
Yep.
at play.
Oscar, I left it with the QR code so that if you can leave that up on the screen for the public, anybody sitting at home who wants to take their phone over to the TV, you can take a picture of our, maybe we shouldn't have a dinosaur in the middle of it, but it looks like we do. But you can take a picture of that and it'll lead you quickly to our application process. So if you're interested, or please, if there's anybody in the public who can help us out, we're hitting a critical stage and we can't just keep functioning as normal and think that all the services that have been provided and access that's been provided can continue when we're in this scenario. It's really, it's become a challenge.
What about short-term? So if, for example, we have some college students coming home November, December, January that might
Help
be
us out.
looking. Okay.
Help us out. Yep. So that's a great piece. It could be daytime positions that are available to college students. There are some age restrictions, so we don't want somebody who left Campbell or graduated from Campbell last year to become a sub at Campbell. That's not going to happen, but there are other roles that we can fit into and to make things work out. So we can absolutely work with that.
But just to confirm, at our current juncture, we may not be able to accommodate after-hours stuff, just based off of if we have a call-out or something at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I don't know how to accommodate it.
Right, I just want to make clear, though, that that's really where we're at, like, things, if we have a call-out at this point, we could potentially need to cancel access on short notice. Is that what am I understanding correctly?
We had the homecoming dance 2 weeks ago, and we almost had to cancel it because we weren't even at this shortage yet. But with only one night person at that, luckily they decided to do extra and come in on that Saturday. But we're almost at the point where events like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people understand that we are, we're at a point where things will get canceled and it will be with short to no notice if it's a sickness or something like that.
Somebody calls in at, say the second shift starts at 2:15 at the middle school, and we get a phone call at 1:30. What are we going to do?
Right.
Like, we're going to have to just make some decisions.
Right. I'm just looking forward to, I know we're going to hear, can you believe that we didn't get notice that this was canceled? So I want to just put it clear on the record, this is coming at some point, unless we find someone that wants to.
I
apply for these
appreciate it,
jobs.
because what we've done is we've just figured out where in the hat the rabbit is, and we've pulled it out. We made it work. But we had the staff, you have layers to fall back on. We no longer have those, and that's why, I never walk the board through how dire it is, but you have to see how dire it is, because when I saw the email today, I just went, holy smokes. Now what? All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else for superintendent report?
Oh, that's more than
I didn't see
enough.
anything. Okay, I didn't see anything else, but wanted to make sure. Business and operations, turn it over to Mr. Totten.
Great, thanks. So my report continued to grow as we got more information. So unless people have questions on electricity, financial reports, or transportation, I was going to start with the local education tax rate. All right, so that was released today. So in that, for the local part of your tax rate, that'll be $13.96. There is a spreadsheet which is linked to that. This spreadsheet people have had access to for months now, since budgeting last year. So you can kind of follow the bouncing ball of where we ended up with $13.96 and what we estimated we would be at. So the first page is just that summary as far as where we were around the warrant time for the estimate. We thought we'd be at $14 for the general and capital projects fund, and then 41 cents if the land was approved. So the land was approved, so therefore we thought we'd be at $14.41. So we are now at $13.96, and the obvious question is, why are we less? So if we go to the next tab, you can see that there are past rates as well as columns C and D, which have column C is where we were estimating at budget time, and column D is where we're at right now. So what didn't change was budgets. Those were approved by townspeople, and those are the budgets that we work with. But where we are at with some of our revenue, we've fine-tuned that as we know who's paying tuition. As the interest rates on everything has gone up. Some of that's bad if you're buying a house, but some of it's good if your money is in the bank. So we're earning more on our investments. And then as well as special education aid. So that again is the aid that goes if a student's education costs more than 3.5 times the state average, which is around $19,500. So 3.5 times would be, about $65,000 or more. So we get reimbursed the following year for that. So we have more students qualifying for that than we have in the past. Therefore, we're expecting to get reimbursed more. So some of this is increases in known revenue. As you scroll down, if you get to line 38, you can see that the fund balance, which is where we ended up with that $442,000, was more than we were estimating. We didn't know where we'd end up, but we put in the $132,000 because we knew that was being given back from the state to reduce taxes. So we were able to, and again, a lot of this had to do with not paying for employees that we wanted to hire, but positions that weren't there led to the higher fund balance. Another number that changed was the amount coming in from the state, and the school board decided to, instead of appropriating that to be spent someplace else, like other towns did, they decided to have that money also go back to reduce taxes. As we scroll down a little bit further, we use the same number as a town as far as the local valuation of property, and it ended up being less than the number that both of us use. So that would impact it kind of the wrong way. But altogether, we went from expecting the tax rate for, again, our general fund, and then remember we raised some money to appropriate for the capital improvement, capital projects fund, from $14 to $13.55. And then, of course, we have the land. Some of our warrant articles don't raise any money because it's from fund balance, but this was a raise and appropriate for the land. So it was raising that $497,000. So again, those combined is where we end up for the tax rate. I don't know if there's any questions from here, and definitely if there's any questions from the town, email me up. This is important. This is, people see the tax rate. People are paying money directly to the school, and I definitely want to be available to anybody in the town if they have questions on that. So email me, call me, and we can talk. Any questions from the board?
Do we send this to the budget committee?
Have we sent this to the budget committee? So we just got this today.
Right.
So
I'm assuming it's something that they would like to see.
yeah. So I can talk with, they might already have it from the town as well, so.
Who's attending budget committee tomorrow?
Andrew thinks he'll be back, so if not, Andrew, it'll be me.
So,
So one of you can advise of this and send the link around?
Sure.
Yeah, and again, this is the same link that they would have had access to, that anyone in the town would have had access to. So it is open, so if you have the link, other people have the link.
I'm happy to send it to JD as well, just
as well.
Chair to chair.
Yeah.
All right, so next thing on there is budget, kind of dates and timeline. As I was reviewing the meeting schedule, one thing stood out for me, and that was, the schools have several weeks to look over the budget. It seems like rushed for the schools because they're also starting up school at the same time. So they have 400 or so kids in their building. They're trying to make sure the kids are all set, the parents are all set, but then they're also start to work on their budget. But they do have several weeks to do that. Then we have several weeks to look at the budget, to then form the superintendent's budget, multiple meetings with the schools, multiple meetings, kind of with Mike and I and Holly. So we have time to digest the budget as well. Then it goes to the school board, and the school board had on here, if we look at the dates, they have November 2nd and November 7th. And then after that, if you look at the November 9th date, that's the budget committee. So that's when they start making decisions on the school board budget. And then they have several weeks to kind of meet and talk and hear more from Mike and I and anybody else about the budget. So we have several people with several weeks and one group of people, being the school board, with not a lot of time. So I wanted to bring that up because, as I reviewed it again, it was just glaring. So, on these meeting schedules, we have possibility of the 8th, which is open. I don't know if it's communication with the budget committee saying, you have the 9th. Do you want the 9th, or could the school board meet again on the 15th, which is already scheduled, and then you have the 16th type of thing? Or if you have the 9th, we would want to communicate that the school board might still make changes on the 15th. I just think it's important that the school board has some time to not only listen, but to digest, because we're always talking about a 25 million or so budget that has multiple factors that go from kids that are age 4 up to kids that are age 22, and all the adults that work within that. So I wanted to bring that up. I don't know if you guys want to discuss this now or think about it, but
I think it's important to also highlight for the board. So you called it the superintendent's budget, but I want to talk about the budget that you're going to get. It's not a budget that I have had overview on and made cuts to. So at the urging of the admin team, it's the full request from the admin team that is going to come to you. I'm not making cuts to that. I'm not holding things back. I'm not going to say, hey, there are things here that, there aren't things here because we've already cut those at our level. So the administrative team was insistent that as the educational professionals for the district, that they want you to see every single request that they've had, every single thing that they feel they need to run the schools, every personnel request that they feel they need to run the schools, and that they do not feel that necessarily we should be making cuts to those things, that we should be coming forward with the full request. Well, that means the budget you're going to get is more higher. Let me just use a number. There are more requests in it than what the board has typically seen. So your need to make those hard decisions, to weigh out what the educational professionals feel they need to operate the schools against what you feel you can support with the taxpayers will be on the board's shoulders this year. So it's a little bit of a different ask. Our team is looking at our per pupil expenditures and the fact that we're incredibly low. And we feel that we've been holding back for too long, and that it's critical that the public and the board see what we need in order to operate. And so to me, it paints a different picture in terms of this ask, because
we need more time.
Do the days out, right? So we're going to give this to the board in writing on the 26th. We're on track. We think we're going to hit that target date to get that into your hands on paper. And, you're then going to be going through all of those numbers and trying to digest, and you're going to have a million questions when you look at it. We meet for the first time the following Thursday, because that's a Thursday. The following Thursday, we'll be there and we'll walk you through and we'll do all the presentation and answer all your questions. The following Tuesday, you get the rest of the presentations and an opportunity to make any adjustments that you want. And then it goes to the Budget Committee on that Thursday. It is incredibly tight. We're not in control of the Budget Committee timeline. We can't say, don't meet on the 9th. They'll do what they're going to do. But my suggestion, and actually Doug, I don't think he agreed with me, but I said, I think we need an extra meeting. It seems like you've been adding an extra meeting anyway in the past. So potentially meeting on the 8th, just so that we can have one more opportunity to understand it, make motions, et cetera, might make some sense. And it's going to be easier to schedule it now than to schedule it on the 7th when you go, we need more time. Did I summarize that okay?
Yeah, no, I think hitting the point of the cost per pupil is important, which you did. I mean, as we look at it, if we're 136 out of the 162 that reported, that means probably for years, which is my understanding, that they've been coming in with a lean budget, whether it be COVID, whether it be, what happened with capital projects fund, no matter what, it was different asks to come in with a lean budget, and they have followed through with that to the point where the cost per pupil is a lot lower than other places. So coming forward with their thoughts on what could make the schools more robust does make sense. I think, all of them coming forward have great ideas, and I think they also are understanding that not everything they ask for is going to pass, whether it be the school board, the budget committee, but to hear that and for them to be able to kind of talk about what could make their school, improve, I guess, is better, or keep up with, because education and learning is changing. So how do we keep up with those changes? How do we make sure that the experiences that the students have are going to be the right experiences, whether they go to college, which is a great place for some students, or whether they go right out to the workplace, which is also a great place for some students. So making sure that they are ready for those experiences which are coming.
What is the board's thoughts on adding a meeting on November 8th?
I think it makes for a very busy week, but I mean, in the past, we have needed an extra day, or an extra meeting. I go back to when I started on the board. One of the things that we started, I think my second year, was doing a workshop day on a Saturday where the school board basically met until all of their questions were answered. Rather than doing the joint evening sessions, we did it all on a Saturday. We heard from all of the admins and directors, and they came in and presented their budgets, and we went through them line by line, and that's how we did it. I'm not proposing that change at this point because I know scheduling it's a crazy time, and it's Halloween weekend. But we never seem to have enough time to sit and think about it. In the past few years, we've gone back and made additional cuts after it's been presented to the budget committee. I'm open to meeting on the 8th to see if we can get it done and then pass it off.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 8th is the best solution. I mean, Budget Committee gave us this proposed schedule months ago, and so I don't feel like we can go to them and say, adjust your schedule so we can have more time. I won't say at the 11th hour, but at the 10th hour. And so the only way to give us more time is to add another meeting. And we can always cancel it if we are able to get through the cuts and the changes that we need to on November 2nd and 7th. But I think it's easier to schedule and cancel than it is to add a meeting on the 7th. And so I'm looking to you guys, but assuming...
I agree.
I think we can go ahead. We'll plan on a meeting on the 8th. We'll need to figure out a location because I believe somebody else meets in this room on the opposite Wednesdays as us. And so we'll have to figure out location and how that will be recorded or available to the public, but we'll have time to look into those details, deciding this now on the 18th to make sure that that's clear. So is that the will of the board?
Yep. So we'll reach out tomorrow to figure out where the meetings will be I'm not sure that we've secured a location for the 2nd and the 7th. And we do want to make
Do the
sure.
fire station last
Well,
time?
I'm not sure, so as I sit here, I'm like, oh yeah, Michelle took care of all that for us. And I'm going, ooh, I need to figure out if we've taken care of that yet.
Before we did it at the fire station, we had done it at Campbell at the, in the Learning Commons.
We did. So that was the Saturday or the night?
No, that was, the Saturdays we had here because nobody wants to be here on a Saturday, so we had it
We
open.
did do it in the library, I remember
Yeah,
that,
we did
yeah.
it a year, I think maybe 1 year.
But I did like it in the fire station. I thought that room was having a lot of TVs, which was nice to be
Yeah.
able to track.
Well, LCTV will say that's the right location for them because
Yeah.
it's all set up. It's
Right.
plug and play.
Right.
If we go to one of the schools, then they have to bring a remote setup.
Harder.
And I don't think it's live broadcast,
Yeah.
right? So the other advantage is that, this is done in public view on television. So I'm going to try to make sure that we can make
Yeah.
that happen. But understand, if not, we may need to do it in one of the schools. And, it's interesting because we've done it in the high school because we used to have the media room there. So we think of that as our fallback place.
Not so much anymore.
Griffin might work just fine.
Okay. Anything else on the meeting schedule? Are we still looking good for getting our estimated delivery October 26th?
We are, yep. So, just briefly touch on some main budget drivers, as we kind of work through budget season. So last year, a lot of that had to do with energy, whether it be changes in electric rates, propane and oil. This year, we reduced our electric rates going into that fiscal year, so that will actually be a savings. I don't really necessarily see oil or propane really going up at this point, so it's less energy. Some of the main budgets, as you can see, no matter who we end up with for transportation, that's gonna bump it up, as well as, the principals, they're looking to staff it, and they're looking to make sure they have the right materials. So you'll see some increases in that, as well as some special ed increases, as we have students who have demonstrated that they have different needs, and therefore, through IEPs, we have to make sure that we're meeting those needs as well. So I'm not gonna necessarily get into detail, because we're still in our last week of consolidating that and fully thinking it over in a way which makes sense for us. Last thing I have on here is the CIP. So we met Monday, I guess it was, and at that time, the CIP group, which Andrew's a part of, they verified the rankings for both the schools as well as the town, and no real surprises as far as those rankings went. The GMS new school was urgent. Renovation, which is, the backup, was deferred, because if the going thinking is new school, then that's where the CIP is kind of calculating the cost out from there as well. They use slightly different rankings than we did, so if you scroll all the way down, I put the legend for their rankings, where they have urgent, committed, necessary, desirable, deferred, inconsistent, and research. Most, we have the urgent for the new school, then we have committed for both the purchase of property as well as purchase of the solar array. So the solar array, I agree with the designation of committed. We still have a choice after 6 years, but financially it doesn't make any sense but to say that we're committed to purchase it ourselves, because that's when we can truly save even some more money at that point as well. A lot of the other things went in as necessary, other than the CHS turf field and the stadium field lightings. That went in as deferred. Remember, we marked those as desirable. We wanted to make sure that the plan encompasses everyone's thoughts on what makes sense at the schools and the school's property. And I think every town talks about turf, every town talks about lighting, and there's people in this town who talk about it. But as we looked at the needs that were above those, we felt, and I think obviously CIP feel, that that's not where we want to focus our time right now. So one thing that they voted on to change was that we had, for the purchase of the solar array, which we're thinking is gonna be around 550 or 600,000, we started putting away 120,000 in March of 2025. They thought it would be best to spread that out. If there's 6 years to go, why not go 6 years, 100,000 every year? So it was talked about at multiple meetings, and then that's the direction that they're presenting it to be. A question they had for the board was, does it make sense as they look at not only the school, but the town? You know, we have different cells of different money, and different years are the columns. As the columns go down for the school, they also add up with the town expenses as well. Does it make sense to have some of these years where it's jumping up or jumping down by more, or is there a way to level it out? So as they looked at 4 of our things that we found necessary, they found necessary, and that being a lot of work at LMS being in regards to the pavement, the parking lot, which is sloped in a way where we're already having failures, and there's been failures before. So we've talked about replacing the parking lot, including maybe working on the slope a little bit as well. We also have a middle school where if you look out at the middle school, there are no fields in view. The fields are on LMS land, but they're down by GMS property. So the thought is to get some fields up at the middle school, baseball, softball field at a diagonal where you could run some soccer in between as well. The thinking with that too is if the Griffin School is not at that property anymore, it makes less sense to have kids playing sports down there without any school personnel within view type of thing. So kind of putting the parking lot, the access road, the fields, as well as the gym floor. Again, we can't sand down the gym floor anymore at the middle school. We have to replace it, which makes sense because it's about 40 years old at this point, as well as the work at the high school. So the high school, as far as we talk about HVAC, wouldn't be a whole turnover like the middle school was, but it would be looking at some of the bigger equipment, the boiler, some of the air conditioning, and doesn't make sense to swap out some of those bigger equipment because we're starting to see failures in parts of it as well. So if we lump those 4 together, which on paper is about 1.8 million, and instead of kind of asking them in 25 and 26 and 27, lump them and then do a 5-year bond on it, therefore you'd have more of that level at that point. So if you, just trying to get back to my notes. If we did the 5 years, it would be about 395,000 per year to pay off that.
How does that balance with the town side?
So I think the town saw some of their needs during those same years that we were seeing, where we'd want to have that about around that 800,000 for the high school, as well as that work at the middle school the year before as well. So it did coincide with some of their years as well.
Aren't we seeking to avoid that? Isn't that the point of the plan is to try to
balance it out for taxpayers
Yep.
across the board?
Yeah, so the 2 years that are the highest overall is 25 and 26, when we're asking for money for the LMS pavement and the LMS fields, and then the next year when it's at 770,000 for that. So those are the 2 highest years as of now for if you add the town and the school together. And by doing a 5-year bond, it would spread it out over the future years, which would therefore bring down those higher years as well.
So the committee is looking for our input on that, or they have
That's
made?
my understanding. They're looking for your input on that.
Did they vote to do that, or it was a suggestion back?
They did not vote on it. It was a suggestion as they looked at the bottom numbers. Now, I don't know if they will eventually vote, no matter our opinion or not, but they were asking for the
Wait,
opinion
I'm
of the
sorry.
school board.
And which year were they proposing the bond?
They were not proposing the bond for any specific year. So I don't know if it's, I mean, when we talk about doing the field and the paving, we've talked about somewhat matching it when work was gonna be happening at the elementary school. So, which I think Kyle projected would be like March of 2025 by the time you had the building plans. And, you know, when the shovels were actually more hitting at that point type of thing. So I think it, you know, it would be that 2025 year and then 5 years from there.
I mean, not seeing the town portion of it, it's hard to.
Yeah.
To provide input on that. I guess I'm not opposed to it, but.
I would defer, I think, to the CIP.
committee,
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that they're necessary. I think
Yep.
they're in agreement that it's necessary. So in
Yep.
terms of priority, we're not seeking to change that. It's just a matter of what's the best way to present it to voters and how does that work in conjunction with the town
Right.
side of things. And I think, in my opinion, not knowing a lot about the town side of things, that the capital improvement plan committee is probably in the best seat to make those recommendations. So I'm not opposed, I'm not against,
That's
I'm
kinda
not
how I
for,
But to Tina's point, it would be good to have their piece of this in here too, so we can see what we're gonna go up against, what's gonna be out there for big ticket items.
Right.
on
Again,
site.
the bond would happen at the close to the project, because I guess my concern would be just running into a gap in time that then changes the cost of
Right.
something.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, it could be a change in cost, or it could be, you know, possibly firm costs and a change in scope. You know, I think we have to do the parking lot. We have to do the gym floor, and I say we have to because we use it every day, but then the basketball rec league, which is a great thing for students to do, especially in the winter, they use it all the time as well. So, you know, those are the two have-tos. I think the field becomes more of a have-to if the elementary school moves. And then the dollar amount for the high school, you know, if it could increase, if pricing increases, or it could be firm, and then we could just kind of figure out what makes sense to change out the most with the amount of money that we have left at that point too.
Doug, what is the next CIP meeting date? Trying to figure out if this should go to facilities,
Oh,
because, you know, our facilities group is the one that did a lot of the work on the CIP, just to beat it up a little deeper, maybe.
I think it's November
it
6th.
says November 6th in Andrew's email, and from there it will be presented to the planning board and select board with the goal of, to have it to Board of Selectmen approved at their meeting on 11/27.
So if we kick this to facilities next Wednesday, and then the board can, you know, consider it by November 1st at your meeting, you're in time to
Yep.
get this done with them. So that might be, I'd suggest that as a pathway to go somewhere with it. The other thing is, what's the experience in Litchfield of a double bond? So in other words, if you have a school bond that passes, I've seen communities that are reluctant to pass a second bond because they feel like, one bond at a time kind of
I
thing.
think
I don't
that's what-
recall we ever did that, did we?
No, I think we've striven to not do that.
Yeah.
You know, the fire station was kind of the top priority, and then the new school, when we, applied for building aid and received it, now that's, every time we, I know things happen, but we try to stick to this combined plan so that we can avoid that burden on the taxpayers,
But
because
and the police station will probably be,
after the school.
after the school, so next year too. Right.
In that time period.
Well, that's what I mean.
There's gonna be a bunch of
It would be
confusion.
really good to know when they want.
Yeah, so.
On the following year's ballot for.
As of right
bonds.
now, for the CIP plan, there is a facility needs assessment for the new police station. But the police station, as far as the bond for that, isn't placed on it right now.
So that's to be determined still.
Yeah.
And when I say double bond, I'm talking like school district, so,
Yeah.
so, again, this is legend, but, when the bond was passed for Campbell, that was part of the argument against the new elementary school bond at the time, because hey,
Oh, I see.
let's pay off the Campbell
Right.
bond before the school
Yeah.
takes out a second bond.
Right.
I think maybe one bond in the town and one in the school, people understand that that's,
Yeah.
that may be palatable, but the school having multiple bonds, I
But
think
I
has
also
been
think the size of the
problematic.
bond would make a difference.
It
You know,
would.
if we are still paying off a school and we go to build another school, that's a lot different than saying,
Correct.
okay,
Right.
let's build the school and get that done, and, then
1.8
a
million.
1.8 million bond is.
Yep.
is-
Seems like a drop in the bucket compared to the school.
Right.
And then another thought would be just
Not a
to
year's
try
point
to,
on the school.
to move the CHS HVAC replacement further down, because that's hitting on what is projected to be the year of the most things that would be on the warrant, in a way.
Town side, you mean?
No, combined.
Combined.
So always combined.
So
Yeah, so
is
look
that
at it
the-
combined. So that we have for
Is-
2026.
Okay.
We're replacing, we had a cracked part of the boiler, so we're replacing that, is the other section gonna crack? I don't know, but, we have been able to absorb those costs. At some point it would make sense to, get some people in there and see what do we really need to replace. But we can keep on limping along. So if the decision maybe isn't to do that double bond, maybe it's to kind of push that down a little bit and then just kind of keep paying the repairs as they come.
I think it's pertinent to mention, just based off of this information though, because we get, in the discussions about the elementary school, I have heard a lot of feedback of you just didn't do a good job. You let the school fall into disrepair, right? And exactly what we're talking about right now is where you have to try to figure out how to do a good job and not let the schools fall into disrepair. So, I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, there's probably 10 people watching this at home right now. So, I don't know how far this gets us, but we have to decide. Obviously, we're talking about whether we can put this on a ballot because whether people will vote for it or not. But at the end of the day, that's how we get to GMS looking the way it does, because we have to make a choice right now as to whether or not we can do the things that are not, none of these are luxury items we're talking about.
And that's the balance, right? Like, how far can we put off maintenance that's necessary? And with balancing, without being accused of neglecting maintenance, right? I mean,
I'd say that also goes into our custodial staff too. It's a lot easier and expected to do preventative maintenance when you're fully staffed. It's a lot harder when you're not fully staffed as well, so.
true. Well, I like the plan for tonight's purposes. I like the plan of kicking it to facilities, to let facilities weigh in on it, and then the board can have another view at it with the full board here, which I think it's important to have the CIP rep here to
Agreed.
kind of talk about his thoughts and then be able to vote if needed on the questions provided by the committee. Does that
Sounds good.
sound like a plan?
Yep.
Great.
So that ends it for me.
Great. Any other questions for Doug? Seeing none, we'll move on to public minutes. I'll make a motion to approve the October 4th, 2023 public minutes.
Second?
Any questions, comments, changes?
Nope.
Seeing none, all in favor of approving the October 4th, 2023 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? That passes 4-0-0. Moving into old business, we need to jump up back to the top of the agenda, to all those items highlighted in green. While we were quite happy to have Mr. Shoemaker join us at the last
Is there
meeting.
a butt to this?
Yeah, he managed to get away without a committee, so we're gonna jump in and give you some committee assignments, to make sure we are,
You said all of those are the ones in green?
yeah, or just all of the committees if he feels so inclined. But yes, I
Do
think.
some shifting.
Yeah, so we can shift things too. It obviously doesn't have to, if people want to join different committees. I mean, we've done this before mid-year to add different perspectives, but the first I see is grading and reporting. The issue with this is that grading and reporting has become two separate committees. So GMS meets separately from grading and reporting, then LMS and CHS, and they typically meet at the same time, making it impossible. No?
No, they are off Tuesdays, so
Okay.
one is the second Tuesday and the next is the third. I've been to both in the past week.
Okay.
The past 2 weeks.
It makes it tough to
It's
be
just a
able
lot.
to
Yeah.
attend both, and so whoever jumps in to do as the backup, and we say the backup would be doing more the primary of one, and then the other person is the primary one, and then cover each other if there's a conflict.
When do
when
these
do they
committees
meet?
meet?
Yeah, so that one is a GMS, I believe, is 3:15, and the secondary is at 2:45 on the second
the-
and third Tuesday of the month.
Tuesdays. So they're once a month, although twice a month in terms of being separate schools, but each is once a month. Is that something? So we'll go through this. Why don't we go through them all so we know when the times are? Litchfield Curriculum Committee, which is formerly known as the PERC Committee, which no one knew what that stood for, so now is really clearly known as the Litchfield Curriculum Committee. Liz did sit on that, and I think she sat on that for many years, didn't she?
Off and on, we alternated.
Okay.
Yeah.
When does that meet?
That is typically an after-school meeting as well.
The Town Capital Improvement Plan Committee, as we were just talking about, Mr. Cutter is the primary representative on that. Liz was the backup if he could not attend. For social media,
When does the capital improvement?
that's at night at least, right?
At
That's
night,
Monday.
quite a bit around this time of year, then it doesn't
Then
meet
not.
too much at all after that.
Can hang with,
Hang with that?
hang as a backup for that.
I think it's
Go ahead,
Monday.
throw me in there.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes Mondays, yeah, so.
And then social media, that's more just posting, right?
Yeah, that's.
Just
me
making sure our
posting.
agenda ends up on Facebook and whatnot.
And I did post the job postings.
Thank you.
After Holly sent out that email, so I shared those again today.
And then the Energy Committee is new.
When do they meet?
I don't know, that's a
That's
town
an
committee.
evening, it's a town committee that we were invited to attend. I believe it's a evening meeting.
That's like brand new, so we don't
And
know a
it's,
lot
yeah, we
about that.
haven't, that one's still pretty new.
They just sent out a survey. So I think they're gathering input at this point.
I mean, you could throw me on that one too.
Yeah.
All right, so Matt's volunteering for energy. Is there any other committee that's already full that you're seeing and going, wow, I really need to be on that committee?
You probably think I would say no, but there are some that look kind of interesting.
What do you want?
I would be happy to back up Peter on the emergency management committee.
Okay.
So that one is during the day. That's what, 9 o'clock?
A 9 o'clock
Yeah.
meeting?
The
Tomorrow
10:30
tomorrow
on-
morning, are you there?
I'll be remote, but I'll be on.
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're adding as a backup to that?
Yes.
Because I want to stay on that.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you can have that. Oh, God, yeah. Your
No, that's-
facilities now?
Yeah.
Score. I mean, I've let,
He's gonna be the backup for facilities. Or
and that will
join
allow
us.
me to do
Yeah.
grading. I can do
Yeah.
a grading and reporting then. I can
So,
back up. to
so
that.
take Heidi off
That
and
would
add
be
Matt.
wonderful.
Yeah, so I'll do one or the other, and we can talk about which for grading and reporting. So slide me in there.
My only concern with social media is I am the worst with social media. Like, if I want to post something on social media, I have to have my wife do it for me.
Yeah, no, don't worry.
Which I'm
It's-
fairly young, but it doesn't.
It's really not that big of a job. So, when things come up, I post for information purposes only.
Okay.
Do we really need a backup for that, I guess, is my question? I think we
Just
can,
do it.
if you need someone to cover you, let the board know and somebody.
Phone's dead or something, you need
Yeah, if you
something
need a
posted.
post, let us
To
know.
get the
Just give me like
agenda
4
posted.
hours notice because it'll take me that long to
But
post.
I think otherwise, I'm not really sure we need a backup because there's no set times for that.
No.
You said you were willing to do a backup for capital improvement committee and then energy committee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm covering, I think the only other one is then PERC, right? Or formerly PERC, Litchfield Curriculum Committee.
If I'm only doing one grading reporting, I can probably squeeze in PERC too. Or, I'm sorry, Litchfield Curriculum Committee.
When does that meet?
That's another after-school one.
After
The
school.
afternoon one's a tough,
Yeah.
They're
Because
tough
it's a
Yeah.
teacher
Yeah,
committee.
yeah.
with the
so-
job and all.
Yeah.
I mean, I can.
Would you like to do that one?
Well, maybe you do it as backup.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll
like,
do it with you.
you guys can alternate attending and that
You're-
way, you're gonna be busy when,
I'm busy anyway.
I know, but as the play gets as the musical
Well,
gets closer.
yeah, that's done in December.
Oh, okay.
Not that I want to bulk up on committees, but that'll let you know. So we're busy now, but
So why don't we put Tina and Matt for Litchfield curriculum? And they will figure it out in terms of who's going.
You said that.
yeah, I did.
And what happened? Did you
Change
just?
your mind? You
No,
side.
no, I keep calling it perk.
Oh.
I can't stop.
I thought you were
stop.
back. I thought you just baited me into it, and then
No,
we're like,
no,
oh,
no.
actually, I'm not doing it.
No, that was my evil laugh.
All right, I think that covers all of our committees, right?
Yep, so I'm gonna try to
Thank you.
summarize this.
Yep.
Make sure I've got my notes right. So, Budget Committee stays with Andrew and Peter.
Yeah,
Facilities, it's Tina with Matt as backup.
correct,
Emergency Management is Peter with Matt as backup.
correct.
Grading and Reporting is Tina with Heidi as backup.
But not backup, really. We're gonna,
gonna split it.
because they're
Split
now
it.
two, we're gonna both do it.
Sharing it.
But yes, shared.
Joint Loss stays Heidi.
Yep.
And by the way, Liz is the faculty rep, so
I know, so
she
there's continuity
actually
there.
loves joint loss, so
Yeah, sure,
anyway.
she can't get enough.
What is joint loss?
Assessing needs of the building,
It's about making sure that we don't have accidents, so it's
Oh.
workplace safety.
safety stuff.
Oh, gotcha.
And
So it's like
it's a legal
Pretty
requirement.
much.
She likes to
So
look
OSHA
around,
doesn't
yeah.
apply to public schools, so this is our own.
It's our own
management.
Our
ocean.
own OSHA.
Cool.
So
Fine,
Litchfield Curriculum Committee is Tina and Matt as a backup.
Yeah.
All right, Website Committee is Andrew. I need to follow up with Andrew because he's missed the last two meetings, so they've done a ton of work on the website, and I know he had a ton of feedback, but I need to
They're
find
not
out why that's
connecting.
not connecting. Wellness Committee is Tina. Town Capital Improvement Plan, so that's Andrew with Matt as backup. Social Media is just Tina.
Correct.
Policy is Heidi and Andrew.
Still doing it.
Energy Committee is now Matt, and Economic Development stays Peter.
Ruby,
All right,
we're there.
thank you for that, and I will update this on the agenda so we have it right the next time.
All right, and next we will go into the Delegates Assembly Report, which you sent us out a pretty thorough
I sure
update.
did.
But
a long
feel free to
day.
touch on.
Yeah.
And
Points?
just for the public, I added today the link at the bottom which says Summary Report, which is
Oh,
your report.
okay.
So I did add
Great.
that to the agenda.
Yeah, those are just the notes that I took.
You need access. So Tina, before you get blasted with a bunch of people,
I have access.
So do I.
I think I shared it with the board, but somebody,
Some non-board people.
Doug did not get it.
and that means anybody in the public watching at home, like
Yeah.
this anonymous
Crow.
crow.
Yeah.
The anonymous crow
crows.
cannot get
Oh,
in.
good. Welcome to my summary. So we, I think this is like my third or fourth delegates assembly that I've attended. I always like going because it's good to see how other school boards operate, and I don't know. I think it's important that we're represented there. So it was on October 14th, so it was a lovely Saturday. They always have a keynote address by the New Hampshire School Board Association School Board of the Year, and this year it was Oyster River Co-op School District, which they just talked about their makeup and how I found similarities to Litchfield in some areas and then differences in some other areas. They're a high achieving district. It's easy to see why they were New Hampshire School Board of the Year. And so I just took a lot of notes about how they kind of do things, and I was struck by how many of the strategic planning, goal setting, evaluations, and those kinds of things, the things that they've enacted to be a high performing school board are very similar to a lot of the same things that we do here with our school board. So I think that we have a lot of the same structures in place and a lot of the same committees in place. So as you read through, you can kind of see what their keys to success were. They outlined 5, and they said by far and away the number one most important key to success is their superintendent and board relationship. Board members, the relationships among board members, the deliberate separation of responsibilities. Their new members are encouraged to go to as many NHSBA workshops and webinars as possible. to really learn their role and how to keep that superintendent board relationship going. And one of the quotes from the superintendent that I really liked, I included it in the summary, was, "You can only move at the speed of trust." I know we've had a lot of discussions lately about trust, and
It's a good quote.
isn't it? Yeah, and it was evident. They had their board chair and their superintendent speaking to the group, and it was really evident that they work together, but they also trust each other to do the job on their own, and then collaborate when they come together. So it was really interesting. They set goals annually. They have a strategic plan that runs for 5 years that they do. So every 5 years they revamp it. They have a committee. They invite 140 stakeholders. So they have parents, students, school admins, teachers, directors, community members, all, and they get together in one big group, and then they separate into each group. And they said one of the really interesting things was when they separated, they had kind of one type of stakeholder for each group. And he said every single group has a student in it. And so the students shared their experience from the day-to-day operations of the school. And so when they're planning their long-term goals and deciding what their plan is for the next 5 years, the students really have an active part in that. So I just kind of, went on and on about that. I took copious notes. And then the business part of the meeting started at around noon. So we were notified that dues to the NHSBA will increase beginning next year. They haven't increased in the last 10 years. And so they're due for kind of revamping. So they've simplified. There used to be this big chart about how they calculate it based on your expenditures the year before. So they're going to do away with that and just calculate it using our FY24 expenditures, and then add a percent increase each year. So instead of figuring out that formula from every year's expenditures and budget, we're just gonna increase it by a little bit, little by little. And then the continuing resolutions that we looked at, I had the board look at and review, all passed by majority vote. Proposed resolutions, most of them went the way that we had discussed, either by passing the original resolution or the amended language recommended by the NHSBA. There were a couple that I was in a very small minority on when I voted. So one of those was, as Mr. Cutter emailed this afternoon, he was curious about why Resolution 10 failed. That was the support legislation to be able to include an estimate of the food service costs in the default budget, which we currently can't do because it's an estimated cost, not a contracted cost. So we had voted to support that because even having a bit, being able to estimate and have that cost in the default makes a big difference when we're comparing the default to the proposed budget. It actually failed by quite a majority, and I think the overall sentiment of the assembly was that they want, there are a number of cost estimated costs that should be able to be included in the default budget. So things that we know we have to provide, we have an idea of how much that will be. We should be able to include those costs because they're mandated by the state in the default budget. So we wouldn't see as much of a discrepancy between the default and the proposed budget. So basically it was, we're not going to support this one, but come back next year with a more broad resolution. The other one that failed that I was a little bit surprised about was 12. It was the NHSBA will support legislation that clarifies the responsibility and accountability of parents and guardians and students who do not conduct themselves. We kind of talked about that, how, we'd like to see.
It's just weird to me that they like pigeonholed that into something that specifically calls out truancy.
Right.
Like the proposed language was,
Yeah, we talked about behaviors
broad.
and, And yeah, I guess in discussions with the district that brought that forward was, well, we're really concerned about habitually truant students and, and otherwise, kids who don't conform to the rules and regulations. So it was less of a broad behavior and, accountability issue. So that one I was also in the minority on. But the sentiment seemed to be that, we can only take care of what we can do as a school district. We really don't have any say in how parents react to, student behaviors or discipline issues or anything like that. So, and then other than that, I think everything went along as we had discussed. Yeah.
Any questions for Tina?
It's a long day.
It is a long day. Thank you for going and representing us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hearing no questions, we'll move into new business. We have 8 policies that are being presented for a second read tonight. I guess, do we want to take them one by one, or is there any reason that we can't group them?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Get ready for alphabet soup.
Here we go. Policy KFA, ECA, EG, JICL, JLCJ, JA, and JJJR, GBEF, and JKAA.
And I will second. Any other
For a
questions?
second reading.
And these are for a second reading, yeah. Any questions?
Didn't we have an open issue on the internet access one, or was that split off from some other?
We did, but what we realized, there was a second component, that GBEF, but that was approved already for a first read at the meeting before that. So that's why in G, it says first read, I think that was supposed to have a date in it, where it says XX-SX, but we had actually already approved that for a first read, and that was the one that was the internet policy for staff, and then there was the internet policy for students, and they were on 2 separate agendas, but they were both approved for first reads separately, so now they're back together.
And did we decide, does this impact any of the forms that parents have filled out already for this school year?
It does impact some of the forms that have been filled out, but there hasn't been a decision as to whether or not those are going to need to be refilled out for the year, or whether or not it would be starting with the next year. We've kind of gone with the philosophy of getting the policies approved and aligned with NHSBA, and then dealing with implementation as the secondary piece of it. And a lot of that's already happening in terms of the different plans that needed to be, communication plan and all of those things. HR, Holly's been working on that, IT's been working, Mike's been working, Doug's been working, so we're getting a lot of the background stuff done, but it's more of a secondary piece of it.
Okay, right.
Seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor of approving these policies for a second read, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain. This passes 4-0-0. Just an update to the board policy committee did meet yesterday, and we will have 3 new policies on the agenda for next week for a first read. So we're going to keep us going. We're working through them slowly but surely. And then that leads us to new business, setting the 2023-2024 tuition rate. I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Jitty.
Yep. So every year we bring forward to the board this sort of tuition rate sheet. We use this, so we have a student who is not living in Litchfield, who's attending from out of town, and this allows us to know how much to charge that family. It actually is easiest to break it down into a daily rate, so we sort of bill by the number of days that are in each month. So it just allows us to have a way to calculate and collect that more smoothly based on the 180 days of instruction. At the bottom, we have chosen to give you kind of the rundown, or run up, I guess, of how the costs have increased over time, so you can see what the elementary, middle, and high school rates have been historically. But the numbers at the top, which are the tuition rates for this year, are right off the DOE 25 form. So when we do all our calculations of how much it costs to educate a student at the elementary, middle, and high school level, those numbers are what got submitted to the state. We've just moved them over here. So these are last year's rates that were determined that will now become the tuition rate going forward. So it's pretty fresh. It's not necessarily exactly what it costs this year, because you would expect there would have been an increase, but the board's never added a 3% multiplier to last year's rates. We just say what it cost last year is what we'll charge people this year, and move forward. So that's what we're proposing as the tuition rates for 23-24. And I'll leave it at that.
Any questions from the board?
You have to accept students in, right?
The board typically approves.
We have to accept students in, okay. And these rates are based off of the, okay, but based off of like what?
Actual cost.
What it actually costs. Okay.
Actual cost.
All right.
So typically when a student is coming in, so for example, actual cost, you exclude certain things, like transportation gets excluded from that number. But these are families that we're not providing transportation for either. So it's it really is the nuts and bolts of the daily experience, the educational experience. And frankly, if you look at it, you're looking at about $100 a day to educate a child. But to have the rich experience that we provide with co-curricular activities available, et cetera, that's really, just compare that out to daycare. What would it cost to put a 3-year-old in a daycare for a day? And I'm not saying schools are daycare, so I want to be really clear why I'm picking that example, but because we're way more than that. But the point is, they're not outrageous costs.
So I will make a motion to approve the tuition rates for the 2023-2024 school year.
I'll second.
Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the tuition rates, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It passes 4-0-0. Moving into school board comments. Any comments? Okay, I have no comments either. Manifest, we have 2 out of 3 signatures.
I have not looked at it yet, but I will sign them.
Did you look at the?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so no questions there. We will move into 10 minutes early, our last community input of the night. So if you are here to provide input.
Don't jinx it when you say that.
Yeah, I know.
Just hinting.
Okay,
That happened last time we didn't get home till 10.
I didn't plan to speak, but I will, since I'm here. So I just wanted to comment on a couple of
Sorry,
things.
can I have you identify yourself and your address? You know the drill.
Kathleen
I'm sure,
Falls,
but-
8 Mike Lane.
Thank you.
Yep. First, I want to congratulate the robotics team. I have a son who was on it for the last 4 years and actually did 7 years in the district from LMS up through. And it really does give a lot to the students. It's a small group, though it's not smaller than some of our other teams. But the business side, the grant writing, the electronics, the metal, the wood shop, the art design, the graphic design, because we do t-shirts, we do sweatshirts, we do all banners, all of that goes into it. Really, anyone who has any sort of interest could be part of that group and get something from it. Whether they are college or career ready, because there's such a hands-on component that it really is beneficial, and then going out and doing the networking piece. So I just want to plug them for a minute. Past that, my next question, I also wanted to say, so Jason said we have 3 students at WPI, and we also have 1 at Ohio Wesleyan, the 4 seniors from last year, and they're all studying engineering in some form. So one question, I know you talked about something. I blanked for a minute. But one thing I wanted to ask is, I know there were surveys going out to the previous students to look and say, were you prepared? Where can we improve? Where do we get the data from that? Because there's so much talk about what our test scores are and what we're doing and whether they're valid. Where do we find the results too? Were the students feeling prepared? Were they able to stay in their career choice or in their college choice? Or did they have to take a step back and do something else because they weren't prepared? I think that's the information we need to know, whether or not those test scores are just a number in a bucket, but they don't really add up to much, or a number that is adding up to something and we need to do something different. So that's my comment on that. And I think you could probably survey past students and ask them
where do you see gaps if we're not doing that already? And where do you see strengths so that we can build on what's working and revamp what isn't? I have 2 that are out, so give you input on that. As far as the job shortage, that's a huge thing, our staffing shortages. You guys highlighted it, and I think it was great that you did that. But part of the problem is, we have tons of college students out, but again, $16.50 at Target, so why make $13 in our school systems? One of my kids was a sub in the district, but she's an LNA now. So she's moved on to something else that is career driven and she's going to make more money at. So it's hard to compete when even Dunkin' Donuts is paying more than we're paying our staff for some of those positions. So I think that's something that as negotiations are coming up, we need to look at. And Dr. Jetty, you used the word burnout, and that's exactly what's happening. We're on year 2 of doing this. We don't have enough paraprofessionals. We're taking on things like taking out the trash, emptying the humidifiers. We're in rooms that my room was out 75% of the lights because there was no one to, they don't have time for it, and that's fine. I get it. I'm not complaining about that at all. They do it when they can, but there's only so much to get to. And so as you're renegotiating their contract, I really think you have to look at that piece of it all. One question I have, if we have 13 paraprofessionals at each building, so we're at 26 plus whatever's missing off of CHS's, can we convert any of those positions to contract? I know they're under it's a union contract for the paraprofessionals, but when they can't find someone to fill our positions, speech or OT, we contract out. And yeah, we may get a part-time position for the whole because contracting out costs so much more money. But when you're talking about the safety of the kids, when you're talking about the education of the kids, when you're talking about your staff can't cover 5 positions for 1 adult, then we have to get creative and start looking at some of that. And I just wonder if that's something that we could potentially do.
So we don't necessarily respond to those questions, but I think they're fantastic questions, and I would suspect that somebody will get back to you with the 2 questions you had in terms of the data, the alumni data, and then what the options are for contracting out and whether that's a possibility. So we'll make sure that those get answered.
Just some thoughts.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else for community input? Seeing none, we will go ahead and we will hit the non-public session of our show here. Pursuant to RSA 91-A:3, we can go into non-public session for A, the dismissal, promotion, and compensation of any public employee, or the disciplining of such employee, or the investigation of any charges against him, unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, requests that that meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted.
Have a good night.
B, the hiring of any person as a public employee. C, matters which, if discussed in public, would likely adversely affect the reputation of any person other than the member or the body of the agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting. And then D through L, you can see the citation. Is there a motion to go into non-public?
So moved.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? That passes 4-0-0. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in for tonight. We appreciate it. Our next meeting is scheduled for November 1st, 2023. And we hope you're able to come in then, bring any input that you may have on any of these present agenda items or any that may be upcoming. Thanks very much and have a good night.